Hello and welcome to the Astro Garden, a place for astrologers to chat all things astro. I'm your host Janessa of By Jove Astrology. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, it's Monday, the moon's day, October 28th, 2024, and I'm back with another episode of the Astro Garden. Today I want to talk about the moon. It feels like the main thing I want to talk about these days, but before I start down that path, I want to announce that I am going to be going live on Friday on Instagram. This will be my first IG live, so make sure to check it out. I'll be going live at 10 a.m. Central Time, so that's 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And then you'll have to do the math on your own if you're not in one of those time zones. But I'm at 10 a.m. Central Time, I am going live to talk about the fourth house. So right now it's spooky season. We've got Halloween in a couple days. And I just always feel like this time of year brings up those fourth house topics for me, whether it's like home and family stuff, because we're kicking off kind of the holiday season, at least in North America. And also, and also because it's like this time of year when we're talking about things from the other world, like the underworld, the Day of the Dead, talking about our ancestors, like regardless of what faith you might participate in or what your beliefs might be, one of the commonalities around this time of year seems to be honoring those who've come before us, and we find those people in the fourth house. And yeah, it's just like, it's a deep, dark house in the chart. It's not a dark house per se when we're talking about traditional definitions, but it's definitely down in the dark half of the chart when we're looking at the ascendant, the first house, and the seventh house, being kind of like the horizon line, and the fourth house is down there way at the bottom underneath the horizon. So if you feel like getting spooky, come over to Instagram at 10 a.m. on Friday. And feel free to bring questions. I want to get into some more significations about the fourth house. And then I also might riff and do a couple little horoscopes based on your rising sign and what sign you have in the fourth house. Maybe get into the ruler of the fourth house and what's going on there. But yeah, let's talk about it. Hope to see you there. All right, so onto the moon. I often pull tarot cards in the morning. After I get everybody out the door, I'm ready to start like my work day. I sit down and light a candle and kind of try to like settle into what I'm going to do that day, whether it's like work or this kind of work. And I typically pull two cards. I ask, what should I focus on today, and how should I do that? And those are the two cards I pull for. Some people get really elaborate, and I think that's great with tarot, but for me, I'm not a professional tarot reader yet, but I find it really helpful to kind of limit the number of cards I'm working with, and just to really sit with the archetypes that come up. And the deck that I use for myself on the regular is the Pagan Otherworlds deck, which comes with, it has a couple extra cards for the moon cycle. So for each phase of the moon cycle, and then I think it has one more extra that's just called the Seeker, and it's kind of similar to the Fool in some ways, but it's just like supposed to be you, the seeker, the person that is coming to the deck for divination and seeking. So anyway, I pull 2 cards from that deck every morning. Today, the card that came up that was what should I focus on? It was the full moon, loud and clear, from the lunar cycle cards that are in the deck. And then, wouldn't you know it, the card I pulled for how should I do that was the Chariot, which is basically another moon card because it's the card associated with the sign Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. So I got the message loud and clear, to focus on the moon today. It's also Monday. Some people might get that and just be like, yeah, it's Monday. Thanks for letting me know. But you can interpret that in a myriad of different ways. So, I took that to mean like, okay, let's soak up what Monday's all about. Typically for me on Mondays, I'm trying to record these individual episodes. Occasionally I do them on Wednesdays too, just depending on the week. But, if we think about the moon, we can think about it as it can be our emotional side. It can be our inner world. It can be our physical bodies. So when I think of the moon and think of like Mondays, I really think about nurturing myself on these days. It works out really well in my current situation where things on the weekend with 3 kids, it's like go, go, go. Even when we're not going anywhere, it's go, go, go. So by go, 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 I mean like just doing regular stuff around our house on the weekend. A lot of demands and a lot of little people that need a lot of attention, and it's fun. And it's also like by the end of it, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go to work now and get to focus on stuff. And I'm sure they feel like it too, and they're ready to go back and see their friends. But anyway, so Mondays, it works out really well for me with my job to be able to ease into the week. I know that's not the case for everybody. But yes, so extra emphasis today. I sat down with my bowl of yogurt and granola and made sure to feed myself breakfast. That's something that is like newer to me. Even though I'm 37 years old now, breakfast has always been just not of importance to me. I never really wanted it in the mornings as like a teenager or anything. I don't know. It just like breakfast food is not really like my favorite kind of food. It's just never been a priority. And now as I've gotten older, I'm realizing like, oh, I probably should make myself have breakfast. And that might be indicative of like other things going on, of like not maybe knowing how to best nurture myself. And, it kind of comes back to me, to this Scorpio moon that I have. And, the moon would rather be over in Taurus, where it's an exalted guest. So in Scorpio, we say it's in its fall. And, it has trouble doing moon things in Scorpio, like nurturing. So that's something I'm sitting with as an adult, and I am working on doing for my body. Lots of tangents I could go on there. But anyway, sat down with my yogurt, started planning out this talk a little bit. I don't do too much in-depth planning, but I like to have some kind of something to talk about. So it's not hopefully just incoherent rambling. And I was like, okay, well, yes, it's Monday. I better pull 2 more cards just to clarify what I should talk about today. Again, what should I talk about and how should I do that? And lo and behold, the first card I pulled, what should I talk about, was the moon card. So here we are, we're talking about the moon. And then how should I do that? I got the 10 of Swords, which to me, that can look like a really negative card in a lot of different decks. It's a little bit less scary in the pagan other worlds, because it's not actively stabbing someone in the back, but the swords aren't. There is like a skull at the bottom and underneath a thorny bush, where these swords are, the 10 swords are kind of crossing each other, making 5 X's. But I've kind of taken this card personally to mean just kind of giving your all, and like not half-assing it, not stopping halfway, just really going the full distance, so that like when you're at the end of the journey, you've given everything and there's nothing left to give. So you kind of just collapse, and maybe in some decks that means getting stabbed in the back with 10 swords. But yeah, just exhausting everything. So let's try to do that today too. All right. So yes, getting back on track with the moon. I've been learning a lot about her lately. I think this has been, a key part of my astrological studies since the very beginning. But it's also a place where I can just always go deeper. It feels like there's infinite depth that can happen here. So yeah, the moon is one of those things that we could learn about infinitely, talk about infinitely. I mean, I think a lot of astrology is that way, and I've probably said that before, but endless rabbit holes. And the moon for me is something that I think I immediately resonated with, because I'm a late Libra sun. I'm literally, my birthday is on the day when the sun moves into Scorpio most years. So like, I remember going and buying cigarettes at a gas station once a long time ago, and like getting carded, and the clerk who rang me up was like, "Oh, you're a cusp baby." And like, I had no idea what he meant, and he clarified like for astrology, like my sun sign, and I'm not sure that I really I don't use cusp sign, or the idea of cusps, in the work that I do now, but at the time it was like intriguing, and I definitely went home and like Googled that. I went home and did it on my computer, because this was way before smartphones, y'all. And it did always kind of resonate. I think I hesitated to think about Scorpio because I wasn't really sure, and it gets a bad rap. But I think there was something that always intrigued me about Scorpio that I maybe just didn't let myself quite go there with it. So then when I saw my birth chart for the first time and realized like, oh, my moon is in Scorpio, it made so much sense. And not just my moon, but my Mercury, my Venus, and Pluto all there. So it made so much more sense to me, like why I feel so scorpionic. But where was I going with this? Yeah, all of that just to say that it was like, it made sense. It was like, this is me. and then learning more and more about that, and like the dignities of the planets, and where we can say they're in their fall, or what type of resources they might have. It did make a lot of sense for my experience to have felt a little bit under-resourced in terms of like how I nurture myself, and like how nurtured I feel by other people. And I think that there's something tricky about talking about the moon, because it's very tender. It's a very tender spot. It's very personal. And there are a lot of ways to injure someone talking about something so tender. So when I'm giving a reading, I'm always very careful when I'm talking about someone's moon. This is like their inner world. This is like their childhood. This is like potentially their relationship with their main caregiver, usually their mother. So it's not something to take lightly, and it's not something to make any type of, throwaway comments about, or things that are flippant, or, sometimes we can't help but make comments like that. But it's important to be very mindful about how we talk about someone's moon. And then I think it's also important to be truthful about it. Even though it can be very sensitive, it's not really, this is my Scorpio stuff coming through. It's not doing anyone any favors to like necessarily sugarcoat things or make things out to be better than they are. I'm not saying we need to come in with like a hammer and be hurtful or brash about it, but I think it's also good to acknowledge like when something is objectively potentially difficult, while still keeping it open for the client to share their lived experience, because that's going to trump anything that an astrologer can say. But yeah, like think about how validating it is when someone can say, oh, that looks really hard, or that sounds like it was really hard. And most of the time people are like, yeah, it was. It was hard. Even if they didn't really realize it before or something, like it can just feel so good to be acknowledged in that way. So I'm saying all of this to say that I have a Scorpio moon, and there are so many negative things said about Scorpio moons. And whether that's like even about them, or like people can go straight to being like, oh, their mom must have been like a really terrible mom, or, maybe they're not a good mom because they have the Scorpio moon, like they don't know how to nurture anyone. There are lots of assumptions that can be made about things like a Scorpio moon. And what I have found in my own experience is that I have often felt those types of things, but as I've gotten older, I've also come to realize, and as I've studied and like talked to numerous people about their charts, that like that moon experience is only my experience, and it's not objective. And it's not to dismiss that my feelings about things or to invalidate them. But like when we look at siblings charts, for example, we can see like one sibling can have a Scorpio moon and another sibling can have a Cancer moon or a Taurus moon, and where the moon is like exalted and welcomed and in their own home. Like, so their experience of that main caregiver was totally different than the Scorpio moon's experience. And obviously this is always evolving, but like my takeaway from that is that this is the experience that I came into being to have. Like, this is the experience that for whatever reason my soul has chosen to explore on this trip around the wheel. So yeah, it just kind of feels like it didn't, and this is not to like remove blame or to not even blame, but like responsibility from people, who maybe aren't good parents. Or I think it's just to say that there is a part of us that has chosen this too. And it's not to say that people have chosen to come into abusive situations. That's not at all what I want to say. But I want to say that I came here to experience what a Scorpio moon can experience. And in my experience, I've had, you know, a pretty good mom. I don't think there is such thing as like a perfect mom, but I do feel really lucky to have the mom that I had. And there were things we didn't see eye to eye on. But I think it's also, for me, it's very tied into like these ninth house topics of like religion and spirituality and higher education, and like all of these things are very woven into like my memories. Memory is also a good keyword for the moon. All of these things are woven into my memories of my early childhood and my experience feeling like we were very Catholic. We went to church every Sunday. All of our like, most of our social, what is the word I'm looking for? It's like social events and like community was through church. Like I volunteered constantly. We were all in choir. And growing up, I really loved that. Like when I was younger and we lived in Florida, I loved like our priest, and I had a really good experience at that church. And then we moved to Minnesota when I was in middle school, and I didn't love the church we moved into. There weren't a lot of options. It was like, we're in a small town. This is the only Catholic church. And it was a lot tougher. And the priest there was a lot rougher and a lot more, I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't good. And I was also growing and becoming a teenager, and I didn't want to spend my time at church anymore. I wanted to do things with my friends, which is a very normal teenager thing to do. So, all this to say that like that became a very big theme in my head somehow. And even though my parents were religious and we went to, well, mainly my mom, even though we went to church and stuff, I always knew that my mom didn't necessarily believe all of the things that they preached, or like that she would take any like hateful stances against people, which, you know, was really that was like my main thing with the church, right? That's like obvious. Like, I don't agree with how they treat certain groups of people, gay people. I think there's a history of all kinds of abuse in the church that I don't stand for. And that I took major issue with, especially when I became a teenager and started to like understand more about social issues. Same with abortion. So anyway, tangents. Clearly, I get worked up about this stuff. Clearly, I want to talk about it. But yeah, so it became clearer to me later as an adult that like, okay, maybe my parents weren't really even like pushing that down my throat. I was growing up in a really small town, surrounded by people who were also very active in their churches that were not Catholic. I had a lot of friends who went to like an evangelical church that was even more extreme, I would say, from my point of view, than the Catholic church. And they were always doing fun things as groups that like you always wanted to be invited to. And there was always some sort of like, just gross religious side to like any of these events. But I wanted to be a part of it. It was like the fun thing to do, to be around my friends, because they would do these fun activities, but it was like a ploy to get you in the door to hear their hate speech, essentially. So yeah, I was in this environment that was like kind of doubling down on these conservative ideologies, and I really felt very angry and like resentful of that and wanted to push back on that. And I don't think my parents really understood that now, like when I'm 37 and I can look back, it's like, I think they thought they were just bringing us to church, and it was just like a community thing. And it was like, just kind of like a default setting, but also like it was how they were raised and how how they wanted to raise their kids, to like have some type of faith, which I can respect and understand. I think in a lot of ways it can be better than having nothing, but lots of caveats. Anyway, I look back now and I see how I experienced that was distorted by my own point of view. And like, that's how all things are. We all have our own points of view when we're experiencing life, and it's all informed by any number of things that we have tucked away in our brain somewhere. And yeah, so that's just given me new perspective. When I talk to anyone about their moon, it can be this place of like, that's forever unfolding and forever becoming clearer to you, and it changes over time. And sometimes it's like more subjective, and sometimes it's more objective of like, that was really fucking hard. I have experiences like that too. We're just really fucking hard. So, not going to get into that today, but, yeah, just the moon, man. It's like, it's beautiful and it's so nuanced, and we should be really gentle with it. I think that's the main takeaway, is like the gentle unfolding and patience as that happens. And yeah, patience, because it's like, it's a lifetime. It's like that inner child work. It doesn't really stop once you like peel back a layer. It's just like, oh, there's another layer. Just an infinite onion if you have a Scorpio moon. And yeah, I guess my closing thoughts are just that there's this new moon happening on Friday, and I'm really excited about it. It's the Scorpio new moon. It's happening on like All Saints Day, if you're Catholic, happening on the Day of the Dead, the day after Halloween. I'm sure there's a million other names for this day after Halloween when we honor those who came before us. So anyway, it's very scorpionic, but also very fourth housey. So I'm doing the fourth house talk, and this new moon is happening right on my Pluto. So new moons we can think of as like seeding points. So I don't know. We'll see what I'm seeding. It won't be visible for a little while, but I'm excited to find out. And yeah, I hope that you'll join me. That's at 10 a.m. on Friday, November 1st on Instagram Live. All right, thanks for listening, y'all. For more information about my work, you can find me at By Jove Astro on Instagram, at By Jove Astrology on Twitter, and the best place to find me of all is at my website, byjoveastrology.com.